Thank you for listening to this report. Since the events that have occurred in Charlotte, North Carolina, I did some digging around, and I want to present this information that hopefully I'm going to do it to my best of my ability, but there are video and links below if you would take the time to read and listen. But after this presentation, I will hopefully be able to lay out more information if made available. Thank you. Welcome to the Third Watch Update. I have not done a Third Watch Update in a while, so I'm actually kind of happy to come back to this this forum that I created a couple years ago. And I kind of laid low, but it's just too important to talk about this upon the most recent events of the Charlotte riots. Now, last year, I really found this fascinating. But after you get into reading these topics, you kind of go down this rabbit hole. And that I've spent 10 hours, and where I end up, it's just amazing. My whole day could be consumed by it. But when I came across this information, of course, after Fallen Prophecy news headlines and discussion forums and topics and people who have blog sites, what I've come away with is that it was consuming so much of my time that all my other stuff was going to get kind of ignored, and I don't want to do that. But I'm going to make an analysis of this report about the Charlotte riots, about what happened in Texas a couple months ago, and why I think it's just so relevant. It's a big puzzle piece that we're not getting, and it really fits into the news headlines today about Black history, about the original Israelites. I'm going to put the links below, so and I'll add and update it, and I'll try to make sure when I update it that you'll know that I went and found this link, and I'll have that updated as well. But why I am going to continually update this is because I'm just going to lay out the end to the beginning, meaning that going back to the time of Israel, and one of the curses of Israel was that their people would be scattered among the earth, and then and at the very end they would be gathered back and brought back into their land. Okay, and that was all because they would not obey God, and their generations and generations after that point, and the tribes of Israel, especially the northern tribe, but most of the tribes of Israel, that if they would go back to God, and that their land would be healed. We know that in 2 Chronicles, if my people who are called by my name will humble themselves and pray and seek my face, then I will hear from heaven and heal their land. I have to say, there has been nothing but more tragedy. And the more that God's people disobey God, the more they're going to experience the curse that comes with it. And I really believe that if you don't get this information correctly, please listen to it. At least take the time. But I haven't studied who the chosen tribes of Israel, who are the original tribes of Israel. I'm not talking about the chosen people. Who are the original tribes of Israel? It always keeps landing back to the Native Americans, Asian, and the Black Negro, as stated in these videos. I can't help but wonder if when God was talking to his people, was he talking about these very important tribes of Israel? Because everything you can see in history, something has been a curse. If you look at the Native American Indians, they were pushed out of their land. If you look at the Black community today, they're the most, they're the ones that are facing the high epidemic of out-of-wedlock births. And that's not excluding that there isn't a population of the white community too. Well, I'm just honing on the tribes of Israel. And most of the slavery and most of the poverty is in the Black communities today. And they call them the indigenous people. But we today can honestly pin this down. I can almost say with 100% fact that they are the tribes of Israel, the lost tribes of Israel, because everything points to it. The last year and a half, I was so taken away by this because it's not described in our newspapers that way. You see the epidemic in crime. You see what happened in Charlotte the last couple of days. It's hard to ignore that as long as God's people don't turn from the lawlessness, it just continues to increase. The wars increase, the race war increase. It's hard to ignore. I can't pretend that there's a big part of our history that is not being told correctly. And when I think of how fascinating that is, it set me free. That was the most amazing part of this, is that all this stress and anxiety I've been having is gone. I don't feel obligated to explain myself because I have what I think is the most important puzzle piece. And I think there are a lot of people that are starting to come upon this information because it wasn't told correctly. I mean, if you were to go into high schools and colleges today and you would say that one of the lost tribes, the main three tribes of Israel, maybe the whole nation of Israel is the lost tribe of Israel, are the black community that we know today. Could you imagine what a difference that would make in the lives of people who have spent their lives wondering, trying to trace back their roots? I mean, we've seen documentary after documentary about roots. Was it told correctly? I don't know for sure. I haven't watched the miniseries Roots. But it's hard to ignore when you get the facts straight and you realize that much of this information wasn't taught correctly. Or maybe it wasn't taught at all. I don't know. But I have to tell you, I've been coming across some information. And do I consider myself an expert? No, but I consider myself a student. And the more education I get, the more I realize how much of this information, if it was given to the right people, especially the children that are entitled to their inheritance, don't you think they have a right to know? Absolutely. But it goes beyond rights, okay? Let me tell you. We want to get past the fact that it's right. It's an inheritance. So this should have been something we all better understood. I just simply think maybe out of ignorance we weren't taught correctly, or maybe much of us we knew something was important about this, but we just didn't have the big puzzle piece. Let me say this: if this isn't a big piece of the puzzle that can really, if you're going to have an aha moment, you might have one after watching these videos. And like I said, the reason I introduced this because of what's going on in America, because I see the epidemic of crime, because I see the epidemic of violence, especially in the recent riots. We don't want our streets to become a war zone. But what is the war about, okay? We can say it's about poverty. We can say that there aren't rights and these lives matter and this lives matter. I had to take it a step beyond that. I believe if you take it from this approach, which I find is Bible prophecy, it really fits into a big part of Black history, Asian history, that has not been told. We've always believed that if you pray to the pagan gods or you follow along with this Eastern mysticism, yoga practices, believe me, many people think that is the part of the culture, when very much their culture has been erased over centuries. And many of which I believe, going back to the Philippines, to Africa, Ethiopia especially, because most of the Ethiopian rabbis will state this too. They are the true Israelites. I have a hard time pretending that this information isn't the keys to the kingdom. Really, I do. And I hope that you watch these videos. That's the main thing. I'm so empowered by this information. I can't help but pretend that that everything up to this point, I believed it. I was always very skeptical about how we were taught history. Not that I think there's a distortion in history, but it's not being told completely correct. And believe me, I'm borrowing a statement from my own father that half-truths mean they're still lying. Okay, we've always been on the fringe, always waiting to hear the real information. I don't want to pretend like history's being told completely correct or incorrect. I don't want to pretend that, but I have a hard time believing that we're getting the full story. And that's why I think many people are looking at prophecy as a way, as a puzzle piece to telling more about history. It really does put things in perspective. Now listen, does it make a difference of what's going to happen today in our news headlines? I don't know. It depends on what you think of this information. I think it can explain why there is movements like this, Black Lives Matter. I think it can explain a lot of things. I think as long as they're going to make war, there's not going to be peace in the world. Okay? And it all comes back to 2 Chronicles 7:14. If my people who are called by my name will humble themselves and pray and seek my face, then I will hear from heaven and heal their land. And everything that you can look about black history from the time of the slaveries that existed at that time period, it's not, who can argue that the curse of slavery, the curse of poverty, that all these curses could be broken. And I believe these are the generational curses. As I wrap this information up, I really thank you for taking the time to really put the puzzle pieces together, because it really does explain American history, explains what's happening today, and I can think it has a lot to do with what's going to happen ahead of us. I mean, history has a way of repeating itself. If the world becomes a slave, it's only because we got to know who's really in charge here. I mean, it depends on who you think of God is. But to me, God is love. And he doesn't come to enslave. He comes to set the captives free. And according to the Bible, if everything that we have learned to be true would really be the puzzle piece to what was really described in the beginning, you know, that my people, God's people, would not be victims of slavery. They would be free. How we're protected for is another story, because many people share different beliefs about that. But my belief is that much of what we don't know is a puzzle piece to what I believe today could be the best, the hope for the future, not a curse. Because if anything, if the people are set free, then God will no longer let them suffer the consequences of that curse, that generational curse. Thank you for listening. I hope you really follow these updates. I will update it regularly at the Third Watch Update. God bless you. Thank you for listening to the Field Report Third Watch Update. You can also find me at 103.3 FM or 1370 AM at WGIV, the soul of Charlotte. I also have a radio show. We should be changing the times and dates, but it's called the Moonlight Lounge. I'll see you there. And you can also find me at Twitter at www.twitter.com, the Moonlight Lounge.